I never imagined that calling an AC repairman during a 115-degree heat wave would unravel everything I thought I knew about my family. At first, it was just a broken air conditioner, but what was hidden inside that system led to something far darker, something sealed behind a locked attic door for years. When the repairman looked at me and said, "Sir, this isn't just a malfunction. Someone did this on purpose," my blood ran cold. Let me tell you how a faulty AC, a message from a stranger, and 5 heavy padlocks shattered my reality and revealed the monster sleeping just steps away from me. Hey there, we're so glad you're here. Before we dive in, please consider liking this video, subscribing to the channel, and letting us know your location in the comments. It helps us grow this community. Important note, this account features fictionalized aspects intended for entertainment and educational exploration. Any resemblance to actual individuals or settings is unintentional, yet the underlying message carries significant value worth reflecting on. My name is Robert Mitchell, and for 68 years I thought I understood the people closest to me. I believed I could read my wife's smile, sense my children's needs, and trust the man who called me Dad, even though he married into the family. I was wrong about all of it. This story begins in the spring of 2019, though I didn't know it then. My wife Linda and I had just celebrated our 40th anniversary. We'd spent 4 decades building a quiet life together in Phoenix, raising 2 kids, watching them grow, saving for retirement. I'd worked as an insurance executive for 30 years, and Linda taught elementary school until her knees gave out. We had the kind of marriage people call comfortable, which is another way of saying we knew each other's rhythms so well we didn't need to speak to understand. That spring, Linda started complaining about headaches. At first, she brushed them off as stress rubbing her temples while we watched the evening news. Then came the fatigue. She'd collapse on the couch after grocery shopping, too exhausted to put away the milk. I urged her to see a doctor. She went through blood work scans, even a neurologist visit. Everything came back normal. The doctors chalked it up to aging, maybe early hypertension. They prescribed rest and a low-sodium diet. Around that same time, our air conditioning broke. In Scottsdale, Arizona, where summer temperatures climb past 115 degrees, a broken AC isn't just inconvenient, it's dangerous. I called a technician who discovered a refrigerant leak. My son-in-law Dylan, who'd married our daughter Jessica the year before, insisted on handling the repair himself. "I'm an HVAC engineer," he reminded me with a grin. "Save yourself a few $100. I didn't argue. Linda's condition worsened over the following months. The headaches became relentless. She grew dizzy, nauseous. Some mornings she'd wake up confused, asking me what day it was. I begged her to see doctors again, but she waved me off. "I'm just tired, Robert. We're getting old." In November 2019, I woke up to find her lying still beside me. She'd passed away in her sleep. The medical examiner ruled it heart failure. I was devastated, but didn't question it. Linda had been tired for so long. I thought her heart had simply given out. Jessica and Dylan were incredible during that time. They organized the memorial service, fielded calls from relatives, helped me sort through Linda's belongings. Dylan cooked meals for me, drove me to appointments when grief made it hard to function. Jessica would sit with me in the evenings, holding my hand while I cried. I don't know how I would have survived without them. Our son Marcus was harder to reach. He'd moved to Alaska years earlier to work on an offshore oil rig, dangerous, high-paying labor that kept him away for months. He made it home for Linda's service, stayed a week, then flew back north. I could see the grief in his eyes, but he never talked about feelings. That was the last time I saw him in person. By early 2020, I was living alone in the house Linda and I had shared for 3 decades. Every room reminded me of her. The silence was unbearable. In May, Jessica suggested I move in with her Dylan and their daughter Emma. "You shouldn't be alone right now, Dad. We've got plenty of space. Dylan just finished renovating the guest room downstairs. Emma would love having her grandpa around." I hesitated. I didn't want to be a burden, but the truth was I was desperately lonely. I agreed. Their Scottsdale home was a sprawling ranch-style house with a red tile roof and desert landscaping. Emma, who was 6, was a bright, giggly girl who loved showing me her drawings and asking me to read bedtime stories. Dylan treated me with respect and kindness, making sure I had everything I needed. Jessica doted on me, cooking my favorite meals, checking in constantly. For the first time since Linda's passing, I felt a flicker of peace. Then 2 months after I moved in, Jessica called me into the living room. Her face was pale, her hands trembling. "Dad," she said, her voice breaking. "I just got a call from Marcus's supervisor. There was an accident on the rig. An explosion. They couldn't find him." I felt the floor drop out from under me. Dylan pulled up news articles on his laptop, headlines about the disaster. 7 workers lost. No remains recovered. I stared at the screen, numb. My son was gone. Dylan sent me link after link, news outlets, official statements, even a GoFundMe page for victims' families. I didn't question any of it. Why would I? Marcus worked one of the most dangerous jobs in the country. Accidents happened. Jessica and I planned a memorial service without a casket. We buried an empty box beside Linda's grave. I remember standing there staring at the 2 headstones side by side, thinking I'd lost everyone I loved most. The years that followed blurred together. I fell into a quiet routine, helping Emma get ready for school, spending afternoons reading or watching old movies, having dinner with the family each evening. Dylan continued to be attentive, always asking if I needed anything. Jessica's love was unwavering, but sometimes late at night, I'd hear strange sounds from above my room. Scratching. Footsteps. Once a low thud that made me sit up in bed. I mentioned it to Jessica the next morning. "Oh, that's just the attic," she said, laughing. "We've got mice up there. Dylan's been meaning to set traps." Another time I heard what sounded like water running through old pipes. Dylan assured me it was just the plumbing settling. "This house is almost 20 years old, Robert. Things creak." I believed him. Why wouldn't I? I never went up to the attic myself. The pull-down ladder was steep, almost vertical, and Dylan had warned me it wasn't safe for someone my age. "Last thing we need is you taking a fall, Dad," he'd say with a smile. So I stayed downstairs, content in my little corner of their home, never questioning the sounds above my head, never suspecting that the man who called me Dad had already taken everything from me and was planning to take even more. The heat woke me before the sun did. I opened my eyes to a room that felt like an oven. Sweat soaked my pillow. The digital clock glowed faintly, but the house was eerily silent. No hum from the air conditioning, no cool breeze from the vent, just thick, suffocating stillness. I sat up slowly, my shirt damp against my skin. Outside, the sky was beginning to lighten, but the temperature had already climbed past 100 degrees. I shuffled to the thermostat in the hallway and tapped the screen. 89 degrees inside. The system wasn't running. I pressed buttons, toggled settings, tried restarting it. Nothing. The unit was completely unresponsive. My first instinct was to call Dylan. He'd know what to do. I dialed his number. It rang twice, then went to voicemail. I tried again. Same result. I remembered then he'd left for Houston the day before for some big work project. His phone must have died overnight. Jessica was gone too, visiting her mother in Tucson with Emma. They weren't due back until late afternoon. I was alone in a house that was quickly turning into a furnace. By the time the sun fully rose, the temperature inside had reached 94 degrees. I'd opened every window, set up fans, even filled a bucket with ice water to soak my feet in. None of it made a difference. Without air conditioning, the house would become uninhabitable within hours. I had no choice. I needed to call a repair company. I found a local HVAC service online with good reviews and a 24-hour emergency line. The dispatcher assured me someone would arrive within the hour. I hung up feeling a small flicker of relief. Ryan Brennan arrived 45 minutes later in a white van with the company logo painted on the side. He was younger than I expected, maybe late 20s, with sandy brown hair and a tool belt slung low on his hips. He shook my hand firmly. "8 years in the trade," he said. I've seen just about every AC problem you can imagine." I liked him immediately. There was something reassuring about his confidence. He started outside, crouching beside the condenser unit in the backyard. After 15 minutes, he stood and wiped his forehead. "Compressor's fine. No refrigerant leak, no electrical issues. Whatever's wrong, it's not out here." He walked back inside, glancing up at the ceiling. "Your air handler, it's in the attic, right?" I nodded. He grabbed his tool bag flashlight and a small handheld device. "Gas detector," he explained. "Standard safety equipment." He pointed toward the hallway where the pull-down attic stairs were located. "Mind if I head up?" I hesitated. Dylan's voice echoed in my mind. How many times had he told me the attic was off-limits? "It's a mess up there. That ladder's too steep for you, Robert. Last thing I need is you hurting yourself." But standing in a house that felt like it might melt around me, Dylan's warnings seemed less important than the unbearable heat. "Go ahead," I said. "Do whatever you need to do." Ryan pulled the cord, and the attic stairs unfolded with a metallic groan. He tested the first step, then climbed up his tool bag slung over one shoulder. I heard his footsteps above me, muffled and uneven. Then after a moment, silence. I stood at the base of the stairs, staring up into the dark opening. Minutes passed. 5. 10. I started to feel uneasy. What could be taking so long? I considered calling up to him, but stopped myself. Maybe the issue was more complicated than he'd anticipated. 15 minutes had nearly passed when my phone vibrated. A text message. From Ryan. I opened it, expecting an update. But the words on the screen made my blood run cold. "Sir, there's a locked door up here, and my gas detector is going off. You need to come see this." I stared at the message, reading it twice. A locked door. In the attic, Dylan had never mentioned a door. He'd told me the attic was just storage boxes, old furniture, HVAC equipment. Nothing about a room, nothing about a lock. And the gas detector. Why would there be gas in the attic? My hands began to shake. I typed back, "What do you mean, a locked door?" The response came immediately. "You need to see this yourself. Please come up." I looked at the narrow ladder, the steep angle. My knees ached just thinking about the climb. But Ryan's message sounded urgent. I took a breath, gripped the sides of the ladder, and started up. July 15th, 2023, 10:47 a.m. The timestamp on Ryan's phone read when he sent me that message. I climbed the attic stairs, and the air hit me first, hot, stale, and oddly metallic. The space was smaller than I'd imagined, the ceiling low, and sloped, illuminated only by Ryan's flashlight. He was standing near the far wall, the gas detector in his hand, emitting a steady, high-pitched beep. When he heard me reach the top, he turned. His face was pale. "Mr. Mitchell," he said quietly, "I need you to tell me what this is." He stepped aside, and I saw it. Behind a stack of cardboard boxes and an old metal shelf hidden from view was a door. A real door with a handle and a frame. And across the front of it, securing it shut, were 5 heavy-duty padlocks. The kind you'd use on a storage unit. The kind meant to keep something or someone locked inside. I felt the floor beneath me tilt. My vision blurred. I reached out and grabbed the nearest beam to steady myself. I don't know," I stammered. "I've never been up here." Dylan said. Ryan interrupted me, his voice calm but tense. "Sir, my detector is picking up carbon monoxide. High levels. Whatever's behind this door, it's not safe." He pointed toward the air handler nearby. "And look at this." I followed his gaze. The metal casing had been tampered with. Fresh scratches marked the seams, and one panel was slightly askew. Ryan knelt and pried it open with a screwdriver. Inside, I could see wires, coils, and ductwork. But what caught my eye was a series of small, deliberate holes drilled into the heat exchanger, the part responsible for warming air in winter. They weren't accidental. They were precise, intentional. "This isn't a malfunction," Ryan said, his voice tight. "Someone sabotaged this. These holes let carbon monoxide leak into your ductwork." He stood and pointed toward the locked door. "And based on the dampers I'm seeing, it looks like most of that gas is being funneled into two places, your bedroom downstairs, and whatever's behind that door." I couldn't speak. My mind was racing. Dylan had worked on this system. Dylan had been up here countless times. Dylan had told me the attic was dangerous. Ryan moved closer to the door and pressed his ear against it. After a moment, he looked back at me, his expression grim. "Mr. Mitchell," he said softly, "there's someone breathing in there." I couldn't move. My legs felt bolted to the attic floor. Ryan's words echoed in my head, someone breathing in there, but my mind refused to accept it. A locked room, in the attic, with 5 industrial padlocks securing the door, and someone inside. Ryan glanced at me, his expression somewhere between concern and urgency. "Mr. Mitchell, do you know who might be in there?" I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. My throat had gone dry. I shook my head slowly. Dylan had never mentioned a room. Jessica had never said anything. For 3 years, I'd lived beneath this attic, heard strange noises, and dismissed them because I'd been told it was nothing. But this wasn't nothing. This was deliberate. This was hidden. Ryan turned back to the door, running his hand along the frame. The wood was newer than the rest of the attic cleaner, less dusty. It had been installed recently, maybe within the past few years. The padlocks hung heavy on their brackets, each one a different brand, as if whoever put them there had gone out of their way to make the door impossible to open quickly. I stepped closer, my pulse hammering in my ears. The metal shelf that had been blocking the entrance had fresh scrape marks on the floor, as if it had been moved and repositioned regularly. The door itself was plain, no window, no peephole, just smooth plywood, painted the same dull beige as the attic walls. If Ryan hadn't moved that shelf, I never would have known it existed. He knelt beside the air handler again, pointing to the damage he'd found earlier. "See these holes?" he said, his voice low and controlled. "This is the heat exchanger. When the furnace runs, it burns natural gas to heat the air. But someone drilled through it. Deliberately. That means every time the system runs, carbon monoxide leaks into your ductwork." I stared at the punctured metal, my stomach twisting. "But it's summer. We're not using the heater." Ryan nodded grimly. "Right. But someone's been running it anyway. Look here." He pointed to the thermostat controls on the side of the unit. "The furnace has been manually activated. It's been cycling on and off for weeks, maybe months. And with these dampers, the CO isn't going to every room. It's being directed. 2 places, specifically downstairs to your bedroom, and through this duct into whatever's on the other side of this door." I felt the floor shift beneath me. My bedroom, the headaches I'd been having, the dizziness, the fatigue I'd chalked up to age. It wasn't age. It was poison. "How long?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Ryan checked his detector again. "Based on the wear on these drill holes and the soot buildup, I'd say 2, maybe 3 months. He looked at me seriously. "Mr. Mitchell, this isn't an accident. This is attempted harm. And whoever's behind that door has been exposed to the same thing. Probably longer." I reached out and braced myself against the nearest beam. Dylan. It had to be Dylan. He was the only one who worked on the HVAC system. He was the only one who came up here. But why, and who was in that room? Ryan approached the door and knocked once firmly. "Hello, can you hear me?" His voice was calm, professional. No answer. He knocked again, louder. "If you can hear me, make a sound. Tap on the door." Anything. Still nothing. I stepped forward, my hands trembling. "Let me try." I moved beside Ryan and pressed my ear against the wood. At first, all I could hear was the pounding of my own heartbeat, but then faint and uneven, I caught it, a rasping, labored sound. Breathing. Slow. Shallow. Desperate. There," I whispered. "Do you hear that?" Ryan leaned in and nodded after a moment. "Yeah, someone's in there, and they're in bad shape." Panic surged through me. I pulled back and raised my voice. "Hello, can you hear me? If you're in there, say something." Silence. I tried again, louder, my voice cracking. "Please, if you can hear me, let me know. We're going to help you." Nothing. Just that same faint, struggling breath. Ryan reached for his phone. "I'm calling the authorities. We need to get this door open, and we need medical personnel on standby. Whoever's in there might not have much time." "Wait," I said, my voice shaking. I pressed my hand flat against the door, feeling the rough wood beneath my palm. "Please," I said, softer now. "If you can hear me, just try. One word. Anything." For a long moment, there was nothing. Ryan had his phone halfway to his ear, ready to dial. The attic was so quiet I could hear the faint buzz of flies somewhere in the rafters, and then so soft I almost missed it, a voice. Weak, hoarse, barely human. "Dad." The word hit me like a physical blow. My knees buckled, and I grabbed the doorframe to keep from collapsing. That voice. I knew that voice. I'd heard it 1,000 times, laughing at dinner, calling me from across the house, teasing his sister. But that was impossible. That voice belonged to someone who'd been gone for 3 years, someone I'd buried in an empty grave. "Dad, is that you?" My chest seized. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. I pressed my forehead against the door, tears streaming down my face. "Marcus," I choked out. "Marcus, is that you?" There was a pause, a cough. And then so faint I barely heard it. "Yeah, it's me." The attic seemed to tilt. My vision blurred. Ryan was saying something beside me, but I couldn't process the words. All I could hear was my son's voice. My son, who I thought had been lost in an explosion 3 years ago. My son who I'd mourned, who I'd cried for, who I'd believed was gone forever. He was here. He'd been here the whole time. Locked behind a door, breathing poison, barely alive. And I'd lived in the same house just 1 floor below, never knowing. My legs gave out. One moment I was standing, the next I was on my knees, gripping the attic floor. The wood was rough under my palms, splinters digging into my skin, but I barely felt it. All I could hear was my son's voice, weak and broken, echoing in my head. Ryan grabbed my shoulder, steadying me. "Mr. Mitchell, breathe. Just breathe." But I couldn't. Marcus was alive. My son, who I'd mourned and said goodbye to, was locked behind a door 15 feet away. And I'd been living here eating breakfast with the man who'd done this. Ryan's voice cut through the fog. "We need to get help. Now." He was already pulling out his phone, but I held up a trembling hand. "Wait," I managed. Let me call Dylan first." I pulled my phone from my pocket, nearly dropping it. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely unlock the screen, but I needed to hear Dylan's voice. I needed him to tell me this was a mistake. I dialed. It rang once, twice, 3 times, then voicemail. His voice calm and professional. "You've reached Dylan Reeves. Leave a message and I'll get back to you." I hung up and called again. Same result. A 3rd time. Nothing. Ryan watched me, his face tight with concern. "He's not answering." I shook my head, feeling something cold settle in my stomach. Dylan always answered, unless he already knew, unless he was avoiding this exact moment. "I call your daughter," Ryan said quietly. "She needs to know what's happening." I scrolled to Jessica's name and pressed the button. She answered on the second ring. "Dad." "What's wrong?" Her voice sounded normal, concerned but not panicked. I forced the words out. "Jessica Marcus is alive." Silence. 3 seconds of absolute suffocating silence. When she finally spoke, her voice was shaking. "Dad, what are you talking about? Marcus passed away 3 years ago." "No." The word burst out of me. "He's here, Jessica. He's locked in the attic. There's a door, 5 padlocks, and I heard his voice. He's been here this whole time." Another pause, then quieter, almost a whisper. That's not possible." Ryan found him the repair technician. "He found a door and a CO leak, and Marcus is in there." "Jessica, what has Dylan done?" I heard her breath catch. When she spoke again, her voice was different, tighter, panicked. "Dad, listen to me. Don't open that door. Do you hear me? Don't touch it." "What?" "I'm just wait. Wait for Dylan to get home. He'll explain. Don't do anything until he gets back." I stared at the locked door, at the 5 padlocks, at the duct pumping poison into the room where my son was barely breathing. "Are you serious right now? Jessica Marcus is dying in there. Dad, please." Her voice cracked, and I realized she was crying. But it wasn't shock or relief. It was fear. Raw, desperate fear. "Let Dylan handle this. He'll fix it. Just don't open the door. I'm coming home right now. I'll be there in 2 hours. Just wait for me." Something snapped inside me. "You knew." "What?" "Sure, you knew." I repeated, my voice colder than I'd ever heard it. "You knew Marcus was in there." "No, Dad, you've been lying to me for 3 years. You helped Dylan fake his death. You helped him lock Marcus in that room. You stood next to me at his memorial and cried, and you knew the whole time." "Dad, it's not like that." "Then what is it like, Jessica?" I was yelling now, my voice breaking. "Tell me." She was sobbing openly now, her words tumbling out in a rush. "Dad, I didn't want this. I didn't know it would go this far. Dylan said it was temporary, that we just needed time, that Marcus was trying to take everything from us. So you locked him in a room and poisoned him. I didn't know about the CO. I swear I didn't know. Dylan said he was just keeping him out of the way until we figured things out. But I didn't know about the poison, Dad, I swear." I didn't let her finish. I ended the call and threw the phone across the attic. My whole body was shaking. Jessica, my daughter. She'd known. For 3 years she'd known, and she'd said nothing. Ryan was still beside me, his expression grim. "Mr. Mitchell," he said carefully, "we need to call for help. Right now." I nodded. Ryan picked up my phone, checked it still worked, and handed it back. "Call 911. Tell them everything." My hands were still shaking as I dialed. The line rang once before a woman's voice answered. 911, what's your emergency?" I took a breath. "My name is Robert Mitchell. I'm at 472 East Larkspur Drive in Scottsdale. My son is locked in the attic of my daughter's house. He's been there for 3 years. There's a carbon monoxide leak, and he's in critical condition. We need police and paramedics immediately. Can you confirm the address, sir?" 472 East Larkspur Drive, Scottsdale, Arizona. "Is your son conscious?" "I don't know. I spoke to him through the door. He responded, but he sounded very weak." "Is the door locked?" "Yes. There are 5 padlocks on it. We can't get in without cutting them off. I'm dispatching officers and emergency medical services to your location right now. They'll be there within 10 minutes. Can you stay on the line?" "Yes." Ryan stepped closer, holding up his own phone. The screen was recording. "I've been documenting everything. The door, the CO levels, the sabotaged system, your call with your daughter. All of it. I looked at him, feeling gratitude I couldn't put into words. This stranger had just become the only person I could trust. "Thank you," I whispered. He nodded. "Your son's going to need every piece of evidence we can give them." The dispatcher's voice came through again. "Mr. Mitchell, are you still there?" "Yes, I'm here." "Officers are 3 minutes out. Stay where you are. Do not attempt to open the door until they arrive. Do you understand?" "Yes." But even as I said it, I looked at the door, at the 5 heavy locks, at the duct feeding poison into the room, at the thin strip of light beneath the frame, and I wanted nothing more than to rip it open with my bare hands. Behind that door my son was waiting, and I'd already made him wait 3 years too long. The sirens reached me first. Distant wails, cutting through the desert morning, growing louder with each passing second. I was still in the attic, still on my knees beside that locked door, the dispatcher's voice a steady murmur in my ear. Ryan stood with his phone raised, recording. Neither of us spoke. We just waited. 12 minutes after I'd made the call, I heard car doors slamming outside, followed by heavy footsteps on the stairs. The pull-down ladder groaned as someone climbed up. A flashlight beam swept across the attic, and 2 figures emerged. The first was a woman, maybe mid-40s, with dark hair pulled back in a tight bun. She wore the tan uniform of the Scottsdale Police Department. "Mr. Mitchell, I'm Officer Davis. This is Officer Foster. We're going to take it from here, all right?" I nodded, unable to speak. Davis turned to Ryan. "You're the technician who called this in?" "Yes, ma'am." Ryan gestured toward the air handler. "I was here to fix the AC, found that door hidden behind the shelf. My gas detector picked up elevated carbon monoxide levels. The system's been sabotaged. Someone drilled holes in the heat exchanger and redirected the CO into this room and the bedroom downstairs." I heard breathing on the other side of the door. Davis's expression hardened. She moved to the door, pressing her ear against it, then knocked firmly. "This is the Scottsdale Police Department. If you can hear me make a sound..." Silence. Foster stepped forward, listening. "I hear something. Breathing. Very faint. Whoever's in there isn't in good shape." Davis pulled her radio. "Dispatch, this is Unit 12. We've got a confirmed entrapment situation. Subject is unresponsive but breathing. Requesting paramedics immediately." Foster pulled out massive bolt cutters from his duffel bag and positioned himself in front of the first padlock. He braced the handles against his chest and squeezed. The metal groaned but held. He adjusted his grip and tried again. With a sharp crack, the shackle snapped. One down. The second lock was even larger. Foster bore down with all his weight. After what felt like an eternity, the lock gave way with a metallic snap. 2 down. I watched my hands clenched so tightly my knuckles ached. Every second felt like an hour. Behind that door, Marcus was barely breathing. The third lock took longer. Davis stepped in, taking over. She positioned the jaws, braced her legs, and pulled with everything she had. The lock finally gave. 3 down. By now, the paramedics had arrived. 2 men in dark blue uniforms climbed into the attic, carrying medical bags and a collapsible stretcher. One glanced at Ryan's CO detector. "What are the levels?" 40 parts per million when I first checked, Ryan said. The paramedic pulled an oxygen tank from his bag, readying a mask. "We'll need to get him out fast." Davis worked on the 4th lock for nearly 5 minutes before Foster took over. Together, they finally snapped it. 4 down. Foster positioned the cutters around the final padlock, the largest one. He squeezed the handles, his arms shaking. The metal groaned, but didn't break. He tried again, and again. On the 3rd attempt, the lock finally gave way with a sound like a gunshot. 5 down. Davis grabbed the door handle and pulled. The door swung open, and the smell hit me first, stale air, sweat, something else I couldn't name. The room beyond was tiny, maybe 10 feet by 10, with no windows. In the flashlight beams, I saw him, Marcus. At first, I didn't recognize him. The figure on the narrow cot was skeletal, his skin pale and gray, his cheekbones jutting sharply beneath hollow eyes. His hair hung past his shoulders in tangled mats. His clothes hung off his frame like they were 3 sizes too large. He wasn't moving. Then I saw his chest rise and fall in shallow, uneven gasps. The paramedics pushed past me, dropping to their knees beside the cot. The older one pressed 2 fingers to Marcus's neck. Weak. Thready. We need to move fast. He fitted the oxygen mask over Marcus's face. The younger paramedic clipped sensors to Marcus's finger and chest. The screen lit up. Pulse ox is 68. BP's crashing. We need to get him to the hospital now. I stepped into the room, my legs barely holding me. Marcus's eyes flickered toward me. His lips moved, but no sound came out. I dropped to my knees beside the cot, reaching for his hand. His skin was ice cold. Marcus. I whispered, my voice breaking. It's me. It's Dad. You're safe now. His eyes closed, and I felt his hand twitch weakly in mine. The paramedic placed a hand on my shoulder. Sir, we need to move him. Step back, please. I let go as they lifted him onto the stretcher. He looked so small, so fragile. They secured straps across his chest and legs, then carried him toward the attic opening. I followed my legs, shaking, my vision blurred with tears. By the time I reached the ground floor, they were already loading Marcus into the ambulance. I climbed in beside him, gripping the edge of the bench, as the paramedic worked adjusting IV lines, checking monitors. Behind me, I heard Davis's voice. Mr. Mitchell, we're going to secure the scene. We'll need to speak with you at the hospital, and we'll need to locate your daughter and son-in-law. I looked back at her. Find them, I said, my voice hoarse. Find them both. She nodded. We will. The ambulance doors slammed shut, and we pulled away, sirens wailing. I looked down at Marcus, at the oxygen mask covering his face, at the monitor beeping steadily beside him. I reached for his hand again, holding it gently. I'm here, I whispered. I'm not leaving you again. Before I tell you the truth that shattered what little hope I had left. Comment, I'm still here, so I know you've stayed with me this far. And please keep in mind, the next part of this story contains some fictionalized elements meant to deepen the narrative. It may not be entirely true to real events. If you'd rather not continue, you can stop the video here. St. Joseph's Hospital rose against the Phoenix skyline like a fortress of glass and steel. They wheeled Marcus in on the stretcher, and I followed, numb and stumbling, as they rushed him through automatic doors and down fluorescent-lit hallways. A nurse stopped me at the ICU threshold. Your family waits here, sir. The doctors will update you as soon as they can. I sank into a plastic chair in the waiting room, my hands still shaking. The clock read just past noon. It felt like days had passed since I'd woken up to the broken air conditioner. Dr. Warren found me 2 hours later. She was a composed woman in her 50s with graying hair and the calm demeanor of someone who'd spent decades delivering difficult news. She sat beside me, a tablet in her hands. Mr. Mitchell, your son is stable. We've run tests, and I need to be honest about what we found. I nodded, bracing myself. His carboxyhemoglobin level, the measure of carbon monoxide in the blood, was 43% when he arrived. Anything above 40 is life-threatening. If you'd found him even a few hours later, we'd be having a very different conversation. She paused. We've started hyperbaric oxygen therapy. He'll need at least 6 hours in the chamber. Will he recover? Her expression softened. Physically, yes, with time. He's lost 62 pounds. He's severely malnourished, dehydrated, and showing muscle atrophy. Beyond that, prolonged oxygen deprivation can cause neurological damage. We won't know the full extent until he's conscious, and we can run cognitive assessments. But your son is a fighter. The fact that he's alive at all is extraordinary. I pressed my palms against my eyes. Can I see him? Once the treatment is complete, yes. 6 hours stretched into an eternity. When the nurse finally led me to his room, the sight of him stopped me in the doorway. He was propped up slightly in the hospital bed, oxygen tubes in his nose, IV lines snaking from both arms. His face was still gaunt, but his eyes were open, and they were focused on me. "Dad," he whispered. I crossed the room and dropped into the chair beside his bed, reaching for his hand. It was warmer now. "I'm here. I'm right here." Tears slipped down his cheeks. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. You have nothing to apologize for. This wasn't your fault." He closed his eyes for a moment, gathering strength. When he spoke again, the words came slowly. "I need to tell you what happened. Before I forget." "Take your time," I said. "I'm not going anywhere." He nodded weakly and began. July 2020. Sarah, my wife, she was pregnant. 8 months. The doctors said there were complications. She needed an emergency procedure, but our insurance wouldn't cover it. We needed $10,000. I flew out here. I didn't call ahead because I thought maybe if you saw me in person, you'd understand how serious it was. His breath hitched. I got to Jessica's house late, maybe 11 at night. Dylan answered the door. He said you were asleep, that I should wait till morning. He offered me water. I drank it. And then, nothing. My chest tightened. "He drugged you," Marcus nodded. "When I woke up, I was in that room. The attic." Dylan came in a few hours later. He stood in the doorway and told me I came here to take what was his, that you had money, property, everything he and Jessica deserved. He said if I screamed, if I tried to get your attention, he'd make sure something happened to you. He said he'd do it in a way no one would question. And I believed him. He threatened me to keep you quiet. Every day. He'd bring food once a day, just enough to keep me alive. A bowl of something through a slot in the door. A bottle of water. There was a bucket in the corner for everything else. No window. No light except when he opened the door. I tried to break it. I threw myself against it, kicked it, tried to pry the hinges. Nothing worked. I screamed until my voice gave out, but Dylan would just turn on music. Loud. And Jessica. Whenever you heard me, she'd tell you it was mice, or pipes, or the house settling. She knew, I said quietly. She knew the whole time. Marcus's eyes filled with fresh tears. After a year, I stopped trying. I just gave up. The room was silent except for the steady beep of the heart monitor. Marcus continued, his voice growing weaker. 2 months ago, something changed. I started waking up with headaches. Bad ones. I felt dizzy all the time, nauseous. My chest hurt. I didn't know it was carbon monoxide until Dylan told me. His gaze met mine, hollow and broken. He came up one day and said, "You know what's funny? I did this before. To Linda, 2019. Rerouted the CO from the heating system right into her bedroom. Took 6 months, but nobody suspected a thing. Heart failure, they said." He laughed, Dad. He actually laughed. And then he said, "This time I'm doing it to both of you. The old man downstairs and you. When you're both gone, everything goes to Jessica. And I'll finally have what I deserve." The air left my lungs. Linda, my wife. Dylan hadn't just imprisoned my son, he'd taken her from me too. And I'd never known. I'd trusted him. Marcus coughed, and a nurse appeared checking his vitals. "He needs to rest," she said gently. I nodded, but didn't let go of his hand. Marcus looked at me, his eyes pleading. "Dad, I thought I was going to die in that room. I thought I'd never see you again. I thought Sarah would think I abandoned her. You're safe now," I said, my voice thick with emotion. Sarah's going to know the whole story, and Dylan is going to answer for every single thing he's done. Marcus closed his eyes, exhausted. He said he'd get away with it, that he always does. I leaned closer, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. He won't. Not this time. Detective Santos arrived as the sun was setting, her silhouette framed in the doorway of Marcus's hospital room. She was a compact woman in her 40s, dark hair pulled into a severe bun, wearing a charcoal blazer. Her badge hung from a lanyard around her neck. "Mr. Mitchell, I'm Detective Elena Santos with the Phoenix Police Department. I need to take your son's formal statement if he's able." She glanced at the monitors beside Marcus's bed. "I know this is difficult timing, but the sooner we document everything, the stronger our case will be." Marcus nodded weakly. "I can do it." I started to stand, but Santos gestured for me to stay. "You're welcome to remain, Mr. Mitchell. In fact, I'll need to speak with you as well." She pulled a chair closer, setting a leather notebook and a small recording device on the side table. "This is being recorded for accuracy. Marcus, can you confirm your full name and date of birth for the record?" "Marcus James Mitchell, April 12, 1988. And can you confirm that Dylan Reeves held you against your will from July 2020 until today, July 15, 2023? "Yes." Santos asked questions precise, methodical, and Marcus answered as best he could, his voice hoarse and faltering. When she finally closed her notebook, she turned to me. "Mr. Mitchell, I need to walk you through what we've found at the house. Our forensics team has been there since this morning." She pulled a tablet from her bag and swiped the screen. First, we found Dylan Reeves's laptop in a home office. It contained files that are troubling." She turned the screen toward me. I saw a screenshot of a website that looked almost identical to a major news outlet, but the headline made my stomach drop. "7 workers lost in offshore rig explosion, Alaska." The article described a disaster at an oil platform. Marcus's name was among the victims. "This is a fabricated website," Santos said quietly. "If you look at the URL here, it's not the real site. It's cnnnews.info, not cnn.com. Dylan created at least 3 of these fake pages mimicking different outlets, all reporting the same fictional incident. He sent the links to your email in July 2020. I stared at the screen, my hands trembling. I remembered clicking those links. I remembered reading the articles and collapsing into tears. I'd believed every word. He made them himself. Yes. We found the web design software on his computer, along with drafts of the articles. He spent weeks perfecting them. I couldn't speak. I'd mourned my son because of lies Dylan had crafted on a laptop, Santos continued. We also documented the HVAC system in the attic. The technician Ryan Brennan was right. Someone deliberately sabotaged the furnace. Holes were drilled into the heat exchanger, and the dampers were adjusted to funnel carbon monoxide into 2 specific areas: your bedroom and the locked room where Marcus was held. She showed me another photo. This wasn't an accident. This was attempted harm. I felt a wave of nausea. How long was it running? Based on the wear patterns and the furnace logs, it started in early May. It's been cycling on and off for the past 2.5 months. Santos's gaze sharpened. "Mr. Mitchell, did you experience any symptoms during that time? Headaches, dizziness, fatigue?" I nodded slowly. "All of those. I thought it was just I'm 68. I thought I was getting old." "You weren't getting old. You were being poisoned." Her voice was blunt. "Mr. Brennan's quick thinking saved your life. If you'd gone another week without calling for repairs, you and Marcus wouldn't have made it." I closed my eyes, the weight of that truth pressing down on me. "There's one more thing," Santos said. "We need to discuss your daughter." I opened my eyes. "Jessica." We arrested her this afternoon at Tucson International Airport. She was attempting to board a flight to Los Angeles. Santos watched me carefully. Based on the recording, Mr. Brennan provided the phone call you made to her this morning. We had probable cause to detain her. She's currently being held at the Pima County Jail awaiting transfer to Phoenix for questioning. She was trying to leave, I said more to myself than to Santos. It appears so. Whether she was fleeing or simply planning to return later, we don't know yet. But given her statements on that call, telling you not to open the door, insisting you wait for Dylan, she's at minimum an accessory to false imprisonment. I looked down at my hands, still shaking. She knew. She knew Marcus was up there, and she lied to me for 3 years. Santos didn't soften her tone. Yes, sir, she did. The room was silent, except for the rhythmic beep of Marcus's heart monitor. Santos stood tucking her tablet back into her bag. We'll continue processing the evidence. Dylan Reeves is currently in Houston, but we've issued a warrant for his arrest. U.S. Marshals are coordinating with local authorities. We'll have him in custody soon. I'm good, I said, my voice flat. Santos hesitated at the door. Mr. Mitchell, I know this is overwhelming. If you need anything, resources, victim advocacy counseling, let us know. Thank you, I managed. She nodded and left. Marcus shifted slightly in his bed, his eyes on me. Dad, are you okay? I almost laughed at the absurdity of the question. He was the one who'd been locked in an attic for 3 years, and he was asking if I was okay. I reached over and squeezed his hand gently. I will be, once this is over, but even as I said it, I knew there was one more thing I had to do. One more conversation I couldn't avoid. I looked at Marcus. I need to see Jessica. He didn't argue. He just nodded, his face pale and tired. I understand. I stood my legs unsteady and walked to the door. I found Santos in the hallway speaking with another officer. She turned as I approached. Detective, I need to see my daughter. Can you arrange that? Santos studied me for a long moment. Finally, she nodded. I'll make it happen. But Mr. Mitchell, be prepared. She's not in a good state, and whatever she says to you, it might not be what you want to hear. I know, I said, but I need to hear it anyway. 2 days after Marcus woke up, I found myself standing outside the Phoenix Police Department headquarters, staring at the glass doors as if they might swallow me whole. I'd driven here alone, refusing Santos's offer to have an officer pick me up. I needed the time to prepare myself. Inside, the lobby smelled like industrial cleaner and stale coffee. Santos met me at the security desk. Mr. Mitchell, are you sure you're ready for this? I nodded, though I wasn't sure of anything anymore. She led me through a maze of hallways. We stopped in front of a door marked Interview Room 3. Santos turned to me, her voice low. She's been here since yesterday. She's fragile. I'll be in the room with you, but this is your conversation. If you need to stop at any point, just say so. I won't need to stop. Santos opened the door. The room was small and cold, lit by harsh fluorescent lights. A metal table sat in the center, bolted to the floor. Jessica sat in one of the chairs, her wrists cuffed in front of her, her hands resting on the table. She looked up as I entered, and the moment our eyes met, she crumbled. Dad! She choked out, tears streaming down her face. Dad, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I sat down across from her. Santos took a position near the door, watching. I didn't say anything. I just looked at Jessica. Her hair was tangled, her eyes red and swollen, her face pale and drawn. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. Dad, please, she whispered. Say something. I leaned back in my chair, keeping my tone flat. Did you know Marcus was locked in the attic for 3 years? She flinched. Her gaze dropped to the table. Yes, she whispered. I knew, and you said nothing. I couldn't. You couldn't. I cut her off, my voice rising. You couldn't pick up a phone, couldn't tell me, couldn't call the authorities. Dad, you don't understand. Then make me understand, Jessica. I leaned forward. Explain to me how you let your brother rot in a locked room while you lived downstairs and lied to my face every single day. She sobbed, her shoulders shaking. Dylan said it was temporary. He said Marcus showed up trying to manipulate you, trying to get money he didn't deserve. He told me he just wanted to keep Marcus out of the way for a little while. He said he'd let Marcus go. I thought it would be a few weeks. I didn't know it would turn into years. And when it did turn into years, when did you decide to say something? Her face crumpled. I was scared. Of what? Of Dylan. He told me if I said anything, if I went to the police, he'd hurt you. He'd hurt Emma. He said he'd make it look like an accident. I was terrified, Dad. I didn't know what to do. I stared at her. So you chose to protect yourself and Emma, and you let Marcus suffer. I didn't have a choice. You always have a choice. My voice was ice. You chose to lie. You chose to cover for him. You chose to tell me those sounds in the attic were mice. You chose to let your brother starve while you pretended everything was fine. She was crying so hard now she could barely speak. I know. I know I was wrong. I know I'm a coward. But Dad, you have to believe me. I love you. I love Marcus. Dylan lied to me from the very beginning. He made it sound like Marcus was the bad guy, and I believed him. I was so stupid. Santos stepped forward. Jessica, did you help Dylan create the fake news articles about Marcus's accident? Jessica's head snapped up. No, I didn't know anything about that. I didn't even know he'd done it until you showed me the evidence yesterday. Santos made a note. But you did help him keep Robert away from the attic. You told your father those noises were nothing. That makes you an accomplice to false imprisonment. Jessica's face went pale. I didn't think of it that way. I just did what Dylan told me to do. Because you were afraid of him, Santos pressed. Yes. Jessica's voice was barely audible. I was afraid of what he'd do if I didn't. I watched her searching for any sign of the daughter I used to know. But all I saw was a stranger, a woman who'd chosen fear over courage, complicity over truth. I stood pushing my chair back, had weight. Jessica reached out as far as the cuffs would allow. Please don't leave. Please. I looked down at her, and for the first time in my life, I felt nothing when I looked at my daughter. No love, no anger, just emptiness. You're right about one thing, Jessica. You are a coward. Her face twisted in pain, fresh tears spilling over. Dad, please. I turned to Santos. Where is Dylan? Santos's expression darkened. We don't know. After Jessica was arrested, someone must have tipped him off. He was supposed to return from Houston yesterday, but he never showed up. His phone's off and his credit cards haven't been used. We've issued a warrant and the U.S. Marshals are actively searching, but right now he's in the wind. So he's running. It looks that way. I glanced back at Jessica one last time. She was slumped in her chair, sobbing into her cuffed hands. I felt a flicker of something, pity maybe, or grief for the daughter I'd lost. But it wasn't enough to make me stay. I walked to the door, and Santos followed, leaving Jessica alone in that cold room. In the hallway, I stopped leaning against the wall. Santos stood beside me. Are you all right, Mr. Mitchell? No, I said honestly. But I will be. Once Dylan's caught. Santos nodded. We'll find him. I promise you that. I hoped she was right. Because Dylan Reeves had taken everything from me, my wife, my son's freedom, my daughter's integrity, my peace of mind. And I wasn't going to rest until he answered for all of it. 5 days crawled by like years. I stayed at the hospital sleeping in the chair beside Marcus's bed when exhaustion finally dragged me under, waking every few hours to the beep of monitors and the soft shuffle of nurses checking vitals. Marcus was improving slowly, painfully, but he was alive. Doctor. Warren stopped by each morning, her updates cautiously optimistic. His oxygen levels are stabilizing, she said on the third day. But Mr. Mitchell, you need to prepare yourself. Even with the best care, he's looking at 6 months of recovery. Maybe longer. And there's still a risk of permanent neurological damage. We won't know the full extent until he's strong enough for cognitive testing. I nodded, barely hearing her. My mind was elsewhere. On Dylan. On the fact that he'd vanished the moment Jessica was arrested, like smoke slipping through a closing fist. Santos called me every evening with updates, though. For the first few days, there was nothing to report. We've issued a nationwide warrant, she told me on the second night. His credit cards haven't been used. His phone's off. We're coordinating with the U.S. Marshals and the FBI. He can't stay hidden forever. But each day that passed without news felt like a failure. Dylan was out there somewhere free while Marcus lay in a hospital bed fighting for every breath. It wasn't right. It wasn't justice. On the fourth day, I sat beside Marcus and watched him sleep. His face had lost some of its grayness, and the tremors that had racked his body the first 2 days had eased. But he still looked fragile, like a strong wind might carry him away. I reached over and took his hand gently. "I'm still here, son," I whispered. "And I'm not going anywhere until this is finished." His fingers twitched in mine and his eyes fluttered open. "Dad," he rasped, his voice barely audible. "Did they find him?" "Not yet," I admitted. "But they will." Marcus closed his eyes again, his breathing shallow. "I'm scared he'll get away." "He won't," I said, though I wasn't sure I believed it. "You just rest. Let me worry about Dylan." That night, I couldn't sleep. I paced the hospital hallways, my phone clutched in my hand, waiting for it to ring. Waiting for Santos to tell me they'd found him. Waiting for something, anything, to break the suffocating weight of uncertainty. The call came the next morning. I was sitting in the cafeteria forcing down coffee that tasted like burnt rubber when my phone buzzed. Santos's name lit up the screen. I answered before the second ring. "Did you find him? We've got a lead." Her voice was tight with controlled urgency. "Dylan's phone pinged near Nogales about an hour ago. That's a border town south of Tucson. FBI thinks he's trying to cross into Mexico." I stood so fast, the chair scraped loudly across the floor. "Is he still there?" "We've alerted Border Patrol. They're setting up checkpoints at every crossing in the area. If he tries to go through, they'll stop him." U.S. Marshals are en route as backup. "We're not letting him slip through. I'm coming down there." "Mr. Mitchell, I don't think I'm coming." I repeated, my voice hard. "I need to see this." There was a pause on the other end. Then quietly, "All right, but stay back. Let us handle it." I didn't wait for her to change her mind. I told the nurse at Marcus's station where I was going, left a note in case he woke up, and drove south. Nogales was nearly an hour and a half away, but I made it in under 90 minutes, speeding down I-19 with my hands locked on the wheel and my jaw clenched so tight my teeth ached. By the time I reached the border checkpoint, the sun was high and merciless, baking the asphalt until it shimmered. The area was swarming with law enforcement, Border Patrol SUVs, unmarked FBI vehicles, and Santos, standing near a cluster of agents, her arms crossed as she spoke into a radio. She saw me pull up and walked over, her expression unreadable. "He's in custody," she said before I could ask. "Border Patrol stopped him 20 minutes ago at the pedestrian crossing. He was trying to walk into Mexico using a fake ID. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. "Where is he?" Santos nodded toward a holding area near the checkpoint, a small fenced enclosure where a figure sat on a bench, wrists cuffed behind his back. Even from a distance, I recognized him. Dylan. His head was bowed, his shoulders slumped, but it was him. Can I talk to him? I asked. No. Santos's voice was firm. He's being processed. Once we transfer him to the Pima County Jail in Tucson, he'll be held there until we can extradite him to Phoenix. You'll have your chance to face him in court. But not here. Not now. I stared at Dylan's hunched form, feeling a cold, hollow rage settle in my chest. He looked small, pathetic, nothing like the man who'd smiled at me over breakfast, who'd called me dad, who'd locked my son in an attic and poisoned my wife. He almost made it, I said quietly. If you'd been 10 minutes later. But we weren't, Santos said. He's done running. I wanted to believe her. But as I watched Dylan sit there cuffed and silent, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. Not yet. Santos's phone buzzed, and she glanced at the screen. Mr. Mitchell, there's something else we need to discuss. Our financial team has been digging into Dylan's records, and we've found something significant. Can we talk back at the station? I tore my gaze away from Dylan. What did you find? She hesitated, then said, a very large amount of debt. The kind that gives someone a powerful motive for what he did. I followed her back to her car, my mind racing. Debt. Money. It always came back to money. As we drove north toward Phoenix, Santos explained what her team had uncovered: credit card statements, loan documents, wire transfers to shadowy accounts. By the time we reached the city, I understood. Dylan hadn't just been cruel, he'd been desperate. And desperation, I was learning, could turn a man into a monster. Santos's office was a cramped space on the 3rd floor of the Phoenix Police Department, crammed with filing cabinets and stacks of case folders. She gestured for me to sit, then opened her laptop and turned it toward me. Spreadsheets, rows of numbers, dates, transactions. My stomach tightened. Mr. Mitchell, I want to walk you through what we found when we dug into Dylan Reeves's financial history. She clicked through several tabs. This is going to be difficult to hear, but it's important you understand exactly why he did what he did. I nodded, bracing myself. She pulled up a document, a loan agreement. Dylan borrowed money from an organization called Kozlov Capital. We believe it's a front for an illegal lending operation. Loan sharks, who target individuals with poor credit or gambling problems. Gambling. I repeated the word, tasting bitter. Yes. Online poker sports betting. We traced his accounts back to 2021. In the first 6 months alone, he lost over $40,000. She scrolled down, showing me transaction after transaction. When he ran out of his own money, he turned to Kozlov. They lent him $50,000 initially. The terms were brutal interest rates, around 25% per month compounding. When he couldn't make payments, the debt ballooned. She clicked to another page, a timeline. I watched the numbers climb: 60,000, 80,000, 120,000. By 2023, the figure had reached $380,000. I stared at the screen, unable to process the enormity of it. Santos opened an email folder. Messages from anonymous sender addresses. She scrolled through them. Friendly reminder. Payment overdue. Final notice. And then dated May 10th, 2023. Last chance. She clicked it open. The message was short. You have 30 days. Pay or consequences. We know where your family lives. I felt my hands curl into fists. They threatened Jessica. Emma. Yes. And Dylan panicked. Santos pulled up a calendar marking dates with red highlights. May 2023, the same month he received this threat, is when the furnace in your daughter's attic was sabotaged. The carbon monoxide poisoning began exactly 2 weeks after this email. The pieces clicked into place. He needed money fast, and the only way to get it was... Your estate, Santos finished. We estimate your total assets at around $8 million. Under Arizona law, if you passed away without a will, Your estate would be divided among your surviving children. Marcus was supposed to be gone. That left Jessica as the sole heir, and Dylan controlled Jessica. Santos nodded. We found joint bank accounts, credit cards in both their names. If you had passed away, Jessica would have inherited everything, and Dylan would have had access to it. I leaned back, feeling the weight settle over me like a suffocating blanket. So when Marcus showed up in July 2020, Dylan saw him as a threat. If Marcus was alive, the inheritance would be split 50-50. Dylan couldn't risk that, so he imprisoned him. She pulled up another document. So initially we think Dylan planned to keep Marcus locked up until you passed away naturally. Once you were gone and Jessica inherited, Dylan could have dealt with Marcus however he wanted, but he didn't wait. I said, my voice hollow. No, because in May 2023, Kozlov gave him a deadline, 30 days. Dylan couldn't wait for you to pass away on your own. He needed the money immediately. So he escalated. He started poisoning you both slowly enough that it wouldn't raise immediate suspicion, but fast enough that he hoped you'd both be gone within weeks. I pressed my palms against my eyes. Linda's headaches, Marcus's 3 years of hell, my own dizziness, the fatigue I'd blamed on age. All of it deliberate. All of it calculated. He was going to end us both. For money. For money, and to save himself from Kozlov. Santos closed the laptop. Mr. Mitchell Dylan Reeves is a man who was in over his head. But that doesn't excuse what he did. It explains it. And it gives us a clear motive for prosecution. I looked up at her. What happens to Dylan now? He'll be arraigned in Phoenix within the week. The charges are extensive false imprisonment, attempted harm, fraud, conspiracy. With the evidence we have, he's looking at life in prison without the possibility of release. She paused. There's one more thing. I waited, feeling fresh dread. Santos reached for a physical file and opened it. She slid a sheet of paper across the desk to me. It was a court order. I scanned the text, catching phrases like exhumation authorized and forensic examination. What is this? I asked, though part of me already knew. Mr. Mitchell, based on Marcus's testimony, specifically Dylan's confession about your wife, we obtained permission to exhume Linda's remains. The room seemed to tilt. You dug up my wife. We had to. If Dylan poisoned her the same way he tried to poison you and Marcus, there would be traces in her tissue. Hairbone even after 4 years. We needed to confirm. And my voice barely worked. Santos met my eyes, her expression somber. We'll have the results within 48 hours. But Mr. Mitchell, if Dylan did what Marcus said he did, we'll be adding another charge to his case, and your wife's passing won't remain listed as heart failure. It'll be reclassified. I couldn't speak. Couldn't move. Linda. My Linda, who'd complained of headaches and exhaustion, who'd trusted Dylan to fix the air conditioning, who'd gone to sleep one night and never woken up. She'd been taken from me, and I'd never known. Santos stood, placing a hand on my shoulder. I'm sorry. I know this is unbearable, but the confirmation will give you closure, and it'll ensure Dylan answers for everything he's done. I nodded numbly, staring at the court order. 48 hours. In 2 days, I'd know for certain. Thank you, I managed. Santos squeezed my shoulder. We'll call you as soon as the results come in. In the meantime, go be with your son. He needs you. I left the station in a daze, the court order folded in my pocket. The city was bright and hot, but I felt cold, hollow. By the time I reached my car, I realized I was shaking. Not from fear, from rage. Dylan Reeves had taken everything, and now I was going to make sure he paid for it. A week later, I stood at the edge of Desert View Cemetery, under a sky so blue it hurt to look at. The sun beat down on rows of headstones, bleaching the granite white. Linda's grave was near the back, beneath a mesquite tree that offered no shade. I'd chosen this spot 4 years ago because it was quiet, peaceful. Now it felt like a crime scene. The forensic team worked methodically, men and women in white suits moving around the excavation site with clinical precision. I stayed back 50 feet away, my hands shoved deep in my pockets. Santos stood beside me silent. She'd asked if I wanted to leave. I'd said no. I owed Linda this. I owed her my presence even now. It didn't take long. The casket was lifted, carefully placed onto a transport vehicle, and driven away for analysis. I didn't see her. Didn't want to. The Linda I wanted to remember was the woman who laughed at bad jokes, who planted tomatoes in our backyard every spring, who held my hand during movies. 2 days later, I was sitting in the chair beside Marcus's bed, watching the sun set through the window when my phone buzzed. Santos's name appeared on the screen. I answered immediately. "Mr. Mitchell," she said, her voice steady but heavy. "The lab results are in." I closed my eyes. "Tell me." The analysis of Linda's hair and bone tissue shows elevated levels of carbon monoxide. There's a pattern of accumulation over approximately 6 months in 2019. The levels are consistent with chronic low-dose exposure, exactly what we found in your case and Marcus's. She paused. "Mr. Mitchell, your wife was poisoned. Slowly, deliberately. Over the course of half a year, I felt my legs go weak, and I gripped the armrest of the chair. Marcus's eyes were on me, wide and worried. How?" I managed. "Chalkitikiai? We believe Dylan sabotaged the HVAC system in your home back in 2019, before you moved in with him and Jessica. He drilled holes in the heat exchanger and redirected CO into Linda's bedroom. It would have been nearly undetectable, just enough to cause symptoms like headaches and fatigue. Over time, the exposure weakened her, and one night the levels peaked. She passed away in her sleep. The medical examiner ruled it heart failure, which isn't uncommon in cases of severe CO poisoning. Without a specific CO test, there was no way to know. I thought back to that year. Linda complaining of headaches. The doctor visits that led nowhere. And Dylan, who'd come over to help with the air conditioning, who'd asked how Linda was feeling. He was checking on her. I said, my voice hollow. Making sure it was working. "Yes," Santos said quietly. He was monitoring the process. "What?" The word came out as a rasp. "Why, Linda?" "We believe it was a test run. Dylan married Jessica in 2018, just a year before Linda passed away. At that point, he was already in debt. If Linda passed, you'd be alone, vulnerable. He could position himself as the caring son-in-law, gain your trust, and eventually gain access to your finances. And by taking Linda first, he learned how to use CO as a weapon. He perfected his method." I pressed a hand to my face, trying to hold myself together. I let him practice on my wife. I invited him into our home. I thanked him for fixing the air conditioning. "Mr. Mitchell, you couldn't have known. Dylan is a master manipulator. He fooled everyone, doctors, neighbors, even the police at the time. You're not at fault here." But I was. I'd let Linda suffer for 6 months, thinking it was stress or age. I'd let her pass away in our bed while I slept in the next room, oblivious. I'd mourned her, buried her, and moved on, never once suspecting that the man sitting across from me at Thanksgiving had taken her life. "Mr. Mitchell." Santos's voice pulled me back. "Are you still there?" "Yeah," I said, though my voice didn't sound like my own. "I'm here. There's one more thing. With this new evidence, we're amending Dylan's charges. He'll now face 3 counts of attempted harm, 1 for Linda, 1 for you, and 1 for Marcus. Combined with the false imprisonment charge for Marcus, he's looking at life in prison without the possibility of release. The district attorney is confident we have an airtight case." "Good," I said. It was the only word I could manage. Santos was quiet for a moment. Then gently, "I know this doesn't bring her back, but it means Linda's passing won't remain listed as heart failure. She'll be recognized as a victim, And Dylan will answer for what he did to her. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. Thank you. Take care of yourself, Mr. Mitchell. And take care of your son. I ended the call and sat there staring at the phone. Marcus was watching me, his face pale. Dad, he said quietly. Was it? Yeah, I said, my voice breaking. It was him. He took her. Marcus's eyes filled with tears, and he looked away, his hands trembling. I'm sorry, Dad. I'm so sorry. It's not your fault, I said. But they felt hollow. Because someone was at fault. And that someone was locked in a cell waiting for trial. I stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city lights beginning to flicker on in the dusk. Somewhere out there, Dylan Reeves was sitting in a jail cell, probably thinking he could talk his way out of this. But he couldn't. Not this time. Linda was gone. But her memory wouldn't be buried under lies anymore. And Dylan would spend the rest of his life paying for what he'd done. I made myself a promise standing there in that hospital room. I'd see this through. I'd sit in that courtroom, look Dylan in the eye, and watch him lose everything. For Linda, for Marcus, for all of us. The call came on a Tuesday morning, a week after Dylan's arrest. I was making coffee in the small kitchenette of the extended stay hotel where I'd been living. I couldn't bring myself to go back to Jessica and Dylan's house. My phone buzzed on the counter. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Mr. Mitchell. The voice was male, calm, with a faint accent I couldn't place. Your son-in-law owes us $380,000. I froze, the coffee pot still in my hand. Who is this? That doesn't matter. What matters is that Dylan Reeves cannot pay his debt. He's in custody, and his assets are frozen. Which means the debt transfers to his family. To you. I don't owe you anything. I said, my voice sharper than I intended. Chick, you will. You have 7 days to arrange payment. If you don't, there will be consequences. We know where you are, Mr. Mitchell. We know where your son is. There was a pause. St. Joseph's Hospital, room 314. He's recovering nicely, I hear. It would be unfortunate if something interrupted that recovery. The line went dead. I set the phone down carefully, my hands trembling. Then I called Santos. She answered on the second ring. Mr. Mitchell, what's wrong? I told her about the call, every word I could remember. When I finished, there was a long silence. That's Kozlov, she said finally. We've been investigating them. The FBI's involved now. They think Kozlov Capital is part of a larger organized crime network. She paused. Mr. Mitchell, they may try to contact you in person. If anyone approaches you, don't engage. Call 911 immediately. What about Marcus? They mentioned the hospital. I'll have officers stationed outside his room. But the FBI wants to use this. If Kozlov's people show up, it could give agents an opportunity to arrest them. Marcus will be protected. I didn't like it, but I didn't have a better option. Fine. But if anything happens to him, it won't, Santos said firmly. I promise you that. I hung up and drove straight to the hospital. Marcus was sitting up when I arrived, looking better than he had in days. He smiled when he saw me. Hey, Dad, you're early. Yeah. I pulled a chair up beside his bed. How are you feeling? Tired, but better. He studied my face. What's wrong? I couldn't lie. There's been a complication. Dylan owed money to some dangerous people. They called me this morning. They might try to come here. Marcus's smile faded. What do you mean, come here? The police are handling it. There'll be officers outside your room. FBI too. You're safe. I just wanted you to know. He nodded slowly, but I could see the fear creeping back into his eyes. Dad, I don't want to go through this again. You won't, I said, reaching over to grip his hand. I won't let anything happen to you. I promise. Around mid-afternoon, I heard footsteps in the hallway, heavy, deliberate. Two men appeared in the doorway. One was tall, maybe 6'2", with broad shoulders and a black jacket. The other was shorter, stockier, with a hard face and cold eyes. The tall one stepped inside. "Mr. Mitchell, we called you this morning. You didn't take us seriously." I stood positioning myself between them and Marcus. "Get out! Now! We're not here to hurt anyone." His voice was calm, almost friendly. "We're just here to remind you of your obligations. Dylan owes us money. You're going to pay it." "I don't owe you anything." The man took a step closer to Marcus's bed. "Your son is in a fragile state. It would be unfortunate if something happened during his recovery." Marcus pressed himself back against the pillows, his face pale. I felt a surge of rage. I reached for the call button and pressed it hard. "You need to leave," I said, my voice shaking. Right now. The door burst open. Two men in dark suits stepped into the room, badges already raised. FBI, step away from the bed, hands where we can see them. The tall man froze. The shorter one lunged toward the door, but the second FBI agent grabbed his arm and twisted it behind his back. Within seconds, he was face down on the floor, hands being cuffed. The tall man raised his hands slowly. "On your knees," the first agent ordered. The tall man complied, sinking down as the agent cuffed him. The FBI agents hauled both men to their feet and led them out of the room. The whole thing had taken less than a minute. One of the agents, a man in his 40s with graying hair, stayed behind. He flashed his badge at me. "Special Agent Harris, FBI, Mr. Mitchell. Are you and your son all right?" I nodded, though my heart was still racing. Marcus looked like he might be sick. "What just happened?" "We've been tracking Kozlov's operation for 6 months," Foster explained. "When Detective Santos informed us about the threat this morning, we positioned agents outside this hospital. Those two are low-level enforcers, but they'll give us the leverage we need. We've already identified the head of the organization, a man named Victor Kozlov, operating out of Las Vegas. With this arrest, we have probable cause to move in on him." I sank into the chair. "So it's over." "Not yet, but soon." Foster glanced at Marcus. "We'll have agents stationed outside this room around the clock until Kozlov's network is dismantled. You and your son are safe." I looked at Marcus, whose eyes were wide with lingering fear. I reached over and took his hand. "It's okay. They're gone. You're safe." Marcus's voice was barely a whisper. "Dad, I was so scared." "I know, but it's over now." Agent Harris stepped toward the door. "Mr. Mitchell, one more thing. Victor Kozlov will be in custody within 48 hours. When he is, this debt disappears. Dylan's choices are not your responsibility." "Thank you," I said, my voice hoarse. Foster nodded and left. A uniformed officer took up position outside the door. I stayed beside Marcus, holding his hand until his breathing slowed. "Dad," he said after a long silence. "Yeah, I don't think I can take much more of this." I squeezed his hand gently. "You won't have to. We're almost through it. I promise." The call came a week later, early in the morning, while I was making breakfast in the safe house kitchen. Marcus was still asleep. He slept a lot these days, his body recovering slowly from 3 years of hell. When my phone buzzed and I saw Santos's name, I knew immediately it was bad news. "Mr. Mitchell," she said, her voice tight. "Dylan escaped." I set down the spatula, my hand suddenly unsteady. "What do you mean escaped?" "This morning during transport from Pima County Jail to Phoenix. He was being moved for his arraignment. The van was on I-10 when a semi-truck rear-ended it. Hard enough to cause a pileup. In the chaos, officers securing the scene, paramedics arriving, Dylan slipped away. He was still cuffed, but we found the cuffs cut about a quarter-mile down the road. Someone had tools waiting." I pressed my hand to the counter. How is that possible? You said he'd be transferred safely. We believe it was orchestrated, Santos said, frustration in her voice. The truck driver fled the scene before officers could question him. We're investigating whether Kozlov's network helped facilitate the escape. Either way, he had help. So he's out there right now. Yes. Every agency in the state is looking for him. FBI, U.S. Marshals, Border Patrol, Arizona DPS. But until we locate him, you and Marcus are at serious risk. We're moving you to a secure location immediately. I looked toward the hallway where Marcus's bedroom door was still closed. When? Within the hour, Packlight. Agents are already en route. Agent Harris and a woman I hadn't met before, Agent Rachel Morales, arrived 40 minutes later. They moved us quickly and quietly, loading Marcus into a wheelchair and driving us to a nondescript apartment complex in North Phoenix. The unit was on the ground floor with reinforced doors and blackout curtains already drawn. Foster walked us through the security protocols. 2 agents will be stationed outside at all times. Don't answer the door unless you hear the code phrase, Phoenix Sunrise. Oh, if you need anything, call this number. He handed me a burner phone. Marcus sat in the wheelchair staring at the floor. He hadn't said a word since we left. I crouched beside him. You okay? He looked up at me, his face pale. Dad, what if he finds us? I wanted to tell him that was impossible. But the truth was, I didn't know. Dylan had fooled everyone for years. He'd taken my wife's life without anyone suspecting. He'd locked my son in an attic, and now he was out there desperate and dangerous. He won't, I said, my voice more confident than I felt. The FBI knows what they're doing. We're safe here. Marcus nodded, but I could see the fear in his eyes. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in the small living room, the burner phone on the coffee table, waiting for it to ring. Waiting for Santos to call and tell me they'd found him. But the call didn't come. 2 days passed. Marcus improved slightly. He could walk short distances now without the wheelchair. We spent most of our time sitting in silence, the TV on, but neither of us really watching. Agent Morales checked in twice a day, offering no updates. Still searching, was all she'd say. On the 3rd morning, the burner phone finally rang. Mr. Mitchell. Santos's voice was strained. We've discovered something. Dylan had a contraband phone smuggled into the jail before his escape. He used it to contact Jessica. My chest tightened. When? Yesterday. We traced the call, but he'd already ditched the phone. He demanded $50,000 from her, enough to disappear. Jessica refused, told him she's in custody, has no access to money. And, Santos hesitated. He threatened her. Specifically, he threatened Emma. The room seemed to tilt. Emma, Jessica's 6-year-old daughter. My granddaughter. What did he say? He told Jessica, I know where Emma is. I know she's with your mother. If you don't get me that money, I'll find another way to get it. We think he plans to use Emma as leverage, either to extort money from you or to force Jessica to cooperate. I stood, my legs shaking. Where is Emma right now? She's safe. She's at Jessica's mother's house in Tucson. We have 2 plainclothes officers stationed there around the clock. Emma doesn't know about the threat. She thinks she's just visiting her grandmother. But Mr. Mitchell Dillon won't get to her. I promise you that. You promised he'd be safely transferred to Phoenix. I said, my voice harsher than I intended. Look how that turned out. Santos was quiet for a moment. You're right. I can't make guarantees, but we're doing everything we can. Dylan is desperate, which means he's more likely to make a mistake. We'll catch him. I ended the call and sank back onto the couch, my head in my hands. Marcus was standing in the hallway watching me. Dad, he said quietly. What happened? I told him. About the phone, about Emma, about Dylan's threat. Marcus's face went white. He's going after a little kid. He's cornered, I said. A man with nothing to lose. Marcus sat down beside me, his hands trembling. What do? We wait, I said, though the words tasted like ash. We let the FBI do their job, and we pray they find him before he finds Emma. But even as I said it, I couldn't shake the image of Dylan, dangerous, desperate, willing to do anything to survive. He'd taken my wife. He'd imprisoned my son, and now he was threatening my granddaughter. I thought about the promises I'd made to Marcus, that he was safe, that Dylan couldn't hurt him anymore, and I wondered how many more of those promises would shatter before this was over. Santos called me 3 days after Dylan's escape. Mr. Mitchell, I think we have a way to catch him. But I need your permission first. I was in the safe house, Marcus asleep in the next room. What kind of way? Jessica, she's willing to cooperate. I sat down slowly, gripping the edge of the kitchen table. Cooperate how? Dylan contacted her again. He's desperate for money. We want to use that. Jessica will agree to meet him hand over cash. We'll have agents positioned nearby. When he shows up, we'll arrest him. You want to use my daughter as bait? I want to give her a chance to do the right thing, Santos said carefully. She's terrified Dylan will go after Emma. This is her way of protecting her daughter. But I need you to be part of the conversation. Can you come to the FBI office? I didn't want to see Jessica again. The last time I'd sat across from her, I'd walked away feeling nothing but emptiness. But if this plan could end Dylan's threat, I had to try. I'll be there in an hour. The FBI Phoenix field office was a sterile building downtown, all glass and concrete. Santos met me in the lobby and led me through security checkpoints to a conference room on the 3rd floor. Jessica was already there, sitting at a long table, her hands cuffed in front of her. She looked thinner than I remembered, her face pale and drawn. When she saw me, tears welled in her eyes. Dad, she whispered. Thank you for coming. I sat down across from her, keeping my expression neutral. Agent Harris stood near the door, arms crossed, watching. Santos took the seat beside me. Jessica's agreed to help us apprehend Dylan, Santos began. Here's the plan. Dylan contacted her 2 days ago demanding $50,000. Jessica will send him a message agreeing to meet. She'll bring a briefcase with marked bills. When Dylan shows up to collect, our agents will move in. Where? I asked. A public location. Starbucks on Mill Avenue in Tempe. Busy area, lots of foot traffic. Dylan won't be able to escape, and there'll be witnesses if anything goes wrong. What if he suspects a trap? Foster spoke up. We've prepared for that. Jessica will wear a wire, a hidden microphone. We'll have agents positioned inside the coffee shop and on the street, all undercover. Dylan won't know we're there until it's too late. I looked at Jessica. Why are you doing this? Because I can't let him hurt Emma, she said, her voice breaking. I know I've done terrible things, Dad. I know I helped him. But Emma's innocent. If there's even a chance Dylan would go after her, I have to stop him. I studied her face, searching for any sign of deception. All I saw was fear. If this goes wrong, it won't, Foster said firmly. We've run operations like this dozens of times. Dylan's desperate. He'll take the bait. I nodded slowly. What do you need from me? Your consent, Santos said. Jessica's cooperating, but you're the primary victim here. If you don't want this to happen, we'll find another way. I looked at Jessica again. She was crying quietly, her cuffed hands folded in her lap. I thought about Linda, about Marcus, about Emma, who deserved a life free from Dylan's shadow. Do it, I said. Catch him. 2 days later, I sat in the back of an FBI surveillance van parked 2 blocks from the Starbucks on Mill Avenue. The van's interior was cramped, filled with monitors displaying video feeds from multiple angles. body cameras on undercover agents, security cameras inside the coffee shop, a fixed camera aimed at the outdoor patio. Foster sat beside me wearing a headset, coordinating with his team via radio. Agent Morales was inside the coffee shop, posing as a customer. Jessica had arrived 15 minutes early, sitting at a corner table on the patio. She wore jeans and a plain white blouse, a thin wire hidden beneath the fabric. A black briefcase sat on the table in front of her. She looked calm, but I could see her hands trembling when she picked up her coffee cup. "She's doing fine," Foster said, noticing my concern. "The wire's working perfectly. Audio's clear." I nodded, my eyes fixed on the monitor. Around Jessica, the patio was busy, college students with laptops, couples talking over iced drinks, a man reading a newspaper. All of them were FBI agents. The barista inside was an agent. Even the couple walking a dog past the window were agents. Dylan wouldn't stand a chance. At exactly 3 o'clock, a figure appeared at the edge of the patio. Baseball cap, pulled low sunglasses, black hoodie. Dylan. I felt my chest tighten. He walked slowly, scanning the area, then sat down across from Jessica. She said something I couldn't hear over the ambient noise, but Foster adjusted the audio feed, and her voice came through clear and steady. "You're alone?" Dylan asked. "Yes, just like you said." Dylan glanced around one more time, then leaned forward. "Where's the money?" Jessica pushed the briefcase across the table. "50,000. It's all I could get." Dylan unzipped the case. Even through the grainy camera feed, I could see the stacks of bills inside. He picked one up, flipped through it, checking. My hands clenched into fists. Foster's voice crackled through the radio. "Hold positions. Wait for the signal." Jessica's voice came through the wire again. "Dylan, please. Promise me you won't go near Emma." Dylan didn't look up from the money. "I'm not making any promises. You should have helped me when I asked the first time." Jessica's voice wavered slightly. "I trust you." That was the signal. "Go, go, go!" Foster barked into the radio. On the monitors, I watched agents converge from every direction. Agent Morales burst through the coffee shop door, badge raised. The couple with the dog sprinted toward the patio. The man with the newspaper stood revealing a vest marked FBI. Dylan's head snapped up. He shoved the table toward Jessica, knocking her chair backward, and bolted toward the street. He didn't make it 10 feet. One of the agents tackled him cleanly, driving him to the pavement. Within seconds, Dylan was face down, hands cuffed behind his back. He struggled briefly, shouting something I couldn't make out, but it was over. The agents hauled him to his feet and marched him toward a waiting black SUV. I exhaled, my whole body sagging with relief. Foster glanced at me. "We got him, Mr. Mitchell. He's not getting away this time." I nodded, unable to speak. On the monitor, Jessica was still sitting on the patio, her face buried in her hands. An agent approached her, said something, and she nodded. She looked up toward the camera, toward me, and mouthed 2 words. "I'm sorry." I didn't respond. Couldn't. Because even though Dylan was finally in custody, even though the nightmare might finally be over, I couldn't forget what Jessica had done, what she'd allowed. Sorry wasn't enough. It would never be enough. But for now, it didn't matter. Dylan was caught, and Emma was safe. Before I exposed the secret, Dylan thought he'd take to his grave. Type "don't stop" in the comments so I know you're still with me. And a final reminder. The following segment includes fictionalized components created for storytelling impact and may not be entirely real. If that makes you uncomfortable, you can end the video here. The coffee shop on Mill Avenue had been quiet for exactly 4 seconds after Agent Harris gave the command. Dylan bolted not toward the door, but through the outdoor patio, knocking over a chair and a small potted cactus. He made it maybe 10 feet before Foster tackled him from behind, driving him face first into the red brick pavement. 2 other agents swarmed in, wrenching Dylan's arms behind his back and snapping on the cuffs with a metallic click. I stood beside the FBI surveillance van, my hands shaking. Dylan twisted his head, blood smeared across his cheek from the brick, and his eyes locked onto mine through the chain-link fence. His lips curled into something between a sneer and a grin. "You should have died in your sleep, old man," he shouted, voice raw and wild. "You and your son, both of you, should be gone by now." Agent Harris hauled him upright and shoved him toward a black SUV. Dylan kept twisting his neck to glare at me, still shouting, but the words dissolved into incoherent rage as the agents pushed him into the back seat and slammed the door. The SUV pulled away, and I stood there on the hot pavement watching until it disappeared. Detective Santos appeared at my elbow, her hand briefly on my shoulder. "He's going straight to the FBI Phoenix field office. We'll start the interrogation tonight. You should go home, Mr. Mitchell. Get some rest." I nodded, but I knew I wouldn't sleep. The next morning, Santos called and asked me to come to the FBI office. Her voice had that careful, controlled tone that people use when they're about to show you something terrible. The building on North 7th Street was all glass and concrete. Santos met me in the lobby and led me through a maze of hallways to a small evidence room on the 3rd floor. Agent Harris was already there, standing beside a laptop open on a metal table. "We seized Dylan's laptop from his home office yesterday," Santos said. "Our forensic IT team cracked the password this morning. What we found—" She paused. "Mr. Mitchell, you need to see this, but I'm warning you, it's disturbing." Foster turned the laptop toward me. Santos opened a folder buried deep in the file system labeled simply Project M. Inside were 4 files. The first was a Word document, Marcus_log.docx. Santos opened it, and I saw a wall of text, 1,095 entries, each one dated, each one a cold, clinical record of my son's captivity. Day 1, July 18th, 2020. Subject secured. Provided water, 1 slice of bread. Subject is agitated, shouting. Soundproofing adequate. Day 456. November 16th, 2021. Subject still alive but weakening. Muscle atrophy visible. Good. Day 1095. July 15th, 2023. Subject unresponsive most of day. CO exposure accelerating. RM also showing symptoms. Timeline on track. I couldn't read anymore. My vision blurred. "He documented everything," Santos said softly. "Every meal he dropped through the vent. Every time Marcus cried out. Every stage of his deterioration." Foster clicked on the second file, attic_cam_footage.mp4. A grainy video filled the screen. The timestamp read, August 12th, 2021, 11:47 p.m. Marcus was sitting on the floor in the corner, his face gaunt and hollow. He wasn't moving, just staring at the door. Then suddenly he lunged forward and started pounding on it with both fists, screaming, "Please, please, somebody help me. I'm locked in here. Dad, Jessica, anybody." I pressed my palm over my mouth. Santos reached over and paused the video. "There are 18 hours of footage," she said. "We don't need to watch it all. But Dylan kept this. He watched this. He wanted to see your son suffer." I pushed my chair back and stumbled toward the corner, bracing myself against the wall. My stomach heaved. Santos handed me a bottle of water, and I forced myself to breathe. When I sat back down, Foster had opened the third file, an Excel spreadsheet titled co_schedule.xlsx. The columns were labeled Date Furnace Runtime Hours, Estimated CO Parts per Million, Target Expected Timeframe to Incapacitation Notes. The first row read, May 15th, 2023, 8 hours, 50 parts per million. M bedroom 60 to 90 days, slow escalation. RM shows no suspicion. The last row, July 15th, 2023, 12 hours, 200 plus parts per million. RM plus MM, 7 to 14 days. If RM dies first, MM will follow within 48 hours. Inheritance secure. He planned your death down to the day, Santos said, her voice hard. He knew exactly how much carbon monoxide it would take. He calibrated the furnace to poison you slowly enough that you wouldn't suspect, but fast enough that you'd be gone by the end of July. Foster closed the spreadsheet and opened the final file. It was a photograph. My wife, Linda, was lying on our bed, her hands folded across her chest, her face pale and still. The timestamp read November 12th, 2019, 6:42 a.m., 2 hours before Dylan called 911 to report that she'd passed away in her sleep. He took this picture before he called for help, Santos said quietly. He kept it as a trophy. I couldn't speak. I couldn't even cry. I just sat there staring at the image of my wife and felt something inside me break all over again. Santos closed the laptop. Dylan refused his right to counsel, she said. During the interrogation last night, he told us, and I quote, "I'm only sorry I didn't finish the job." He has no remorse, Mr. Mitchell. He's a sociopath. I swallowed hard. What happens now? Arraignment is scheduled for next week at the Maricopa County Superior Court, Santos replied. You and Marcus will need to testify, but I want you to understand something. Dylan isn't walking away from this. The evidence is overwhelming. He'll spend the rest of his life in prison. I nodded, but the fear didn't leave. Dylan had escaped once already. Santos must have seen it in my face, because she leaned forward and met my eyes. We won't let that happen, she said. I promise you. I wanted to believe her, but after everything I'd seen, everything Dylan had done, I wasn't sure I could believe in promises anymore. The Maricopa County Superior Court building rose against the September sky, like a monument to justice, glass and steel and sharp angles. Marcus and I climbed the front steps together, moving slowly. He leaned on a three-legged cane, his shoulders still too thin beneath his pressed white shirt, and I walked beside him in the gray suit I hadn't worn since Linda's funeral. Inside, courtroom 5C smelled of old wood and stale air. The walls were dark oak, the benches hard and unforgiving. 2 flags hung behind the judge's bench, Arizona's copper star, and the stars and stripes, and the jury box sat to the left, 12 empty chairs, waiting to decide a man's fate. We took our seats in the front row. Detective Santos nodded to us from across the aisle. A moment later, the side door opened and 2 bailiffs led Dylan into the room. He wore an orange jumpsuit, hands and ankles shackled, but he walked with his head up, expression blank. His eyes swept over the courtroom over me, and there was nothing in them. No fear, no shame, just cold, empty space. Jessica sat at a separate table near the back, dressed in a blue jail uniform. She didn't look at me. She didn't look at anyone. All rise, the bailiff called. Judge Barbara Hendricks entered, a woman in her 60s with silver hair and a face carved from years of hearing the worst humanity had to offer. We stood. She sat. The room settled. The state of Arizona versus Dylan Michael Reeves, she said. Counsel, are we ready to proceed? Prosecutor Thomas Cooper rose. Yes, Your Honor. Defense attorney Martin Pierce nodded. Ready, Your Honor. Judge Hendricks gestured to Cooper. Opening statement. Cooper stepped to the center and faced the jury. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a case about trust, about betrayal, and about a man who spent 3 years executing a cold-blooded, calculated plan to destroy an entire family for money. He outlined the charges: count 1, first-degree murder of Linda Mitchell in 2019 through deliberate carbon monoxide poisoning. Count 2, attempted murder of Robert and Marcus Mitchell in 2023 using the same method. Count 3, kidnapping and false imprisonment of Marcus Mitchell from July 2020 to July 2023. The evidence will show that Dylan Reeves is not a desperate man who made a mistake. He is a predator who planned every detail, who documented his crimes, and who felt no remorse even as his victims suffered. The trial lasted 4 days. Ryan Brennan testified, first describing the locked attic door, the carbon monoxide alarm, the sabotaged heat exchanger. He was calm, professional, and unshakable on cross-examination. Detective Santos followed, walking the jury through the forensic evidence, Dylan's laptop with the hidden Project M folder, the fabricated news articles about Marcus's fake death, the Excel spreadsheet calculating lethal CO exposure, timelines, the photograph of Linda's body taken before Dylan called 911. The jury sat in silence. Then Marcus took the stand. He gripped the railing as he swore the oath, his hand trembling. Cooper asked him to describe his captivity. Marcus's voice was thin, fragile, but it carried. "I was locked in that room for 3 years," he said. "Dylan drugged me the night I arrived. When I woke up, the door was bolted. He fed me through a vent, bread, water, canned beans. There was no toilet, just a bucket. No light except what came through a crack in the roof. I screamed until my throat bled. I pounded on the door until my hands broke. No one came." He looked at Dylan. "He told me I was just an obstacle, that he'd keep me there until no one remembered I existed. And when I started getting sick, when the headaches got so bad, I couldn't stand, he told me it was carbon monoxide. He said, 'You and your father will be gone soon, and then everything will be mine.'" Dylan didn't blink. Pierce had no questions. Finally, Cooper called me. I walked to the stand, placed my hand on the Bible, and swore to tell the truth. Cooper asked me to describe my relationship with Dylan. "Dylan came into our lives in 2018, I said. "He married my daughter. He was kind, helpful, respectful. I trusted him, and he used that trust to plan my wife's death, to imprison my son, and to try to take everything we had." My voice cracked. "I will never forgive myself for not seeing it sooner." Cooper nodded gently. "Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. No further questions." Pierce stood, hesitated, then sat back down. "No cross, Your Honor." Closing arguments were swift. Cooper: "This is not a case of desperation. This is a case of evil." Pierce: "My client is guilty, but he is also human. I ask for mercy." The jury deliberated for 4 hours. When they returned, the foreperson stood and read the verdict. "We, the jury, find the defendant, Dylan Michael Reeves, guilty on count 1, first-degree murder. Guilty on count 2, attempted murder, 2 counts. Guilty on count 3, kidnapping and false imprisonment." Marcus gripped my hand. Dylan stared straight ahead. Judge Hendricks asked if Dylan had anything to say before sentencing. Dylan stood. He looked directly at me, and for the first time something flickered in his eyes. I'm only sorry," he said slowly, "that I didn't finish what I started." The courtroom froze. Judge Hendricks's face hardened. "Dylan Reeves, you are sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for count 1. You will serve an additional 30 years consecutive for counts 2 and 3. You will never walk free again." 2 bailiffs moved in. Dylan was led away, shackles clinking against the tile floor. Marcus and I walked out into the bright Phoenix afternoon. He stopped on the courthouse steps and looked at me. "Dad," he said, "we won." I wanted to believe him. But Linda was gone. Marcus had lost 3 years he'd never get back. Jessica was going to prison. Emma would grow up without her mother. "No, son," I said softly. "There are no winners in this story." He squeezed my shoulder, and we walked toward the car, 2 men carrying wounds that would never fully heal. The headstone was simple, polished gray granite with her name carved in clean letters. Linda Ann Mitchell, 1955 to 2019, beloved wife and mother. I knelt on the grass, the July sun beating down on my shoulders, and placed a bouquet of white roses at the base. "Shatik," I whispered, "you left us too soon. You deserved so much better. I'm sorry I didn't protect you." My voice cracked. I touched the cool stone, tracing her name with my fingertips. But I promise you, I'll take care of Marcus. I'll take care of Emma. I'll make sure your life meant something. Marcus stood a few feet behind me, leaning on his cane. He'd come a long way in 2 years. He'd gained back 30 pounds, his hair was neatly trimmed, and the hollow look in his eyes had softened. But his hands still trembled sometimes, a permanent reminder of the carbon monoxide that had nearly taken him. I stood brushing the dirt from my knees and turned to him. He smiled gently. "She would be proud of you, Dad," he said. "I hope so." We walked together along the cemetery path past rows of graves and flowering desert shrubs. The air smelled like sage and dry earth. "How's Sarah?" I asked. Marcus's face brightened. "She's good. Really good." "It took a long time, Dad. When I first showed up at her door in Seattle, she didn't believe it was me. She thought I'd abandoned her and Lily." He paused, swallowing hard. "When I told her the truth, when I showed her the news reports, the court documents, she cried for a week. She kept saying, 'I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, I didn't know.' She had no way of knowing," I said. "We went to therapy together, couples counseling. It took months, but we got through it. And now we're rebuilding. We have a little place in Ballard. Lily's in kindergarten. She's amazing, Dad. She's smart and funny and so full of life." My chest tightened. "I'm so glad, son. You deserve that happiness." We reached a bench beneath a mesquite tree and sat down. "Have you been to see Jessica?" Marcus asked carefully. I nodded. "Last month, I drove out to Perryville. I'd visited Jessica at the women's prison. She wore a blue uniform, her hair cut short, her face bare of makeup. She looked older than 40. 'I'm so sorry, Dad,' she'd said through the glass partition, tears streaming. 'I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know I failed you. I failed Marcus. I failed Emma.' I'd finally said, 'Jessica, you made terrible choices. You let fear control you. But Emma still needs to know her mother loves her. When you get out in 10 years, you'll have a chance to make things right. Don't waste it.' I told Marcus all of this now. He listened quietly. 'How is Emma?' he asked. "She's doing well. She's 11 now, living with Jessica's mother in Tucson. I drive down to see her once a month. We get ice cream, go to the park. She asks about her mom sometimes. I tell her the truth, that her mom made a mistake and has to stay away for a while, but that she still loves her." Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Dad, do you blame yourself?" I looked at him surprised. "Every day. You shouldn't." "How can I not?" My voice rose. "I lived in that house for 3 years. You were right above me, locked in a room, and I didn't know. I didn't hear you. I trusted Dylan when I should have questioned him. I failed you, Marcus. I failed your mother." Marcus reached over and took my hand. "Dad, stop. Dylan was the criminal, not you. He manipulated all of us. He was a sociopath. He planned every step, every lie. You couldn't have known. But I should have. No." His voice was firm. "You did everything you could. And when you finally found out, you didn't hesitate. You called the police. You fought for me. You saved my life." Tears blurred my vision. "Do you forgive me?" Marcus pulled me into a hug. "Dad, there's nothing to forgive. I love you." I held him tightly, this son I'd nearly lost, and let myself cry. We left the cemetery together, walking toward the parking lot. The sky was a brilliant, cloudless blue, the kind of sky that made you believe in new beginnings. "What are your plans now?" Marcus asked. I leaned against the hood, thinking. I sold the house in Scottsdale. I couldn't live there anymore. I bought a small apartment downtown near the hospital, and I've been volunteering. Volunteering at a domestic violence center, I said. I share my story with other families, people who've been manipulated, controlled, isolated by someone they trusted. I tell them what happened to us, and I help them recognize the warning signs. Marcus smiled. "That's good, Dad. Really good." I want our story to mean something, I said. Linda's death. Your 3 years in that room. All of it. If I can help even one person see the truth before it's too late, then maybe it wasn't all for nothing. Marcus opened the passenger door, then paused. Dad, do you think we'll ever be okay? Really okay? I looked at him, at this man who'd survived hell and come out the other side scarred but standing. And I thought about Emma growing up in Tucson, about Jessica serving her sentence and maybe someday finding redemption, about Linda resting beneath the desert sky. I don't know if we'll ever be the same, I said slowly, but I think we can be okay. It'll take time. It'll take work. But we're still here. We're still fighting. Marcus smiled. Then that's enough. We got into the car, and I started the engine. As we pulled out of the cemetery, I glanced in the rearview mirror one last time, watching Linda's grave disappear into the distance. The past will always hurt, but we don't have to let it define us. We can choose to move forward together, and that's exactly what we're going to do. Looking back now, standing on the other side of this nightmare, I want to share something with you, something I wish I'd known before it was too late. This family story taught me that trust without awareness can become a weapon in the wrong hands. I believed Dylan because I wanted to believe. I ignored the small inconsistencies, the locked attic, the excuses, because questioning him felt like betraying family. But here's what I learned. Protecting your loved ones sometimes means asking the hard questions, even when it feels uncomfortable. And to you listening to this family story, remember this: God places people in our lives to teach us, to challenge us, and sometimes to show us who we really are. Through all the pain, I found strength I didn't know I had. I found forgiveness, not for Dylan, but for myself. Don't be like me. Don't wait until tragedy forces your eyes open. If someone isolates you, controls information, or makes you feel like you're overreacting, trust your instincts. This dad revenge isn't about anger or punishment. It's about reclaiming your voice, your safety, and your future. The best dad revenge is survival. It's healing. It's refusing to let betrayal define you. Marcus and I rebuilt our lives brick by brick. That's my dad revenge, choosing hope over hatred. If this story resonated with you, I'd be grateful if you'd share your thoughts in the comments below, hit that subscribe button, and pass this along to someone who might need to hear it. Your engagement helps others find these stories. Thank you for staying with me until the end. I want to acknowledge that this narrative contains fictionalized elements crafted for educational purposes. If you feel this content isn't for you, feel free to explore other material that better suits your preferences. Remember, you are stronger than you think, and you are never alone.